And reminder again to sign in. Do we have any new faces?
I don't know if Aman has been here in the past, but I don't want to call him out either.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Myself, Aman. So yeah, I'm new to the Buildpack community. And I actually wanted to join the office hours, but it's too late for the Indian time. It's around 11:30 p.m. night. So just wanted to say hi to all of you and wanted to contribute. Even just now made my first PR to Buildpack. So yeah, really looking forward to contribute ahead to Buildpack.
It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
All right, we'll jump right into release planning and updates.
I'm not prepared for this, but for Pack, we did discuss it during our sync that we are going to be releasing an RC next week, September the 1st, and then releasing September the 8th. That's the anticipated period. So if there's anything that you'd like to see go into Pack, create a PR and try to get it in there before those timeframes.
On the lifecycle side, we are currently in progress on the last issues, mostly around adding tests and validation for the platform 07 support. So we should be able to ship a release candidate pretty soon.
Any updates from other subteams?
Nope.
All right, so we'll jump right into RFCs. First is 166. And this one is a structured bomb format. I think we put this on here just to talk through maybe some of the remaining questions. I guess, Emily, you're gonna propose some changes.
Yeah, I wanted to PR in some changes to this, mostly so that we can to sort of control the life cycle of restoring the build bomb. Right now, we're keeping it with the launch bomb, but in cases where layers are cached but not in the image, then it might get out of sync with what's actually being restored. So I think there are just some logistical details around restoring this data on a per layer basis that need to be addressed, but I feel really good overall about the general structure of the PR and just want to work out these gotchas. I know also during the core team sync, Terrence had asked some questions about the decision to go ahead with multiple formats instead of one, which may be one of the reasons we want to talk about it today, but I also don't see him here to sort of ask those questions, so.
Yeah, he seems to be I think you and him are the only people who haven't approved it yet also. And so.
Yeah, at first I was skeptical about the multiple formats, but I've been convinced by Sam's arguments that it's the right thing to do. So my approval is mostly just holding out on some of these boring gotchas in the life cycle rather than sort of the vision.
I guess, does anybody know if Terrence planned to attend part of this, or maybe we'll skip it and defer it to next sync?
I do have a very minor comment or question. It has to do with one of the open questions, talks about stacks. And the way I'm reading this RFC is that it's very specific to the Buildpacks provided SBOM functionality, right? And one of the things that I believe I saw, I can't pull it up. I'm getting the unicorn for the other RFC, but so I believe that one makes mention to like S-bombs as well. And I guess maybe my question is more revolving, like, do we plan on having the discussion on what the stack S-bomb looks like? Or better yet, I should say the build S-bomb and the runtime S-bomb? Is that something we anticipate coming in as a separate RFC, or just making it part of something else that we've been discussing?
I can't speak for exactly what Sam was imagining, but I think if we figure out a structured SBOM, like right now, we don't have a way for stacks to contribute to the SBOM. So I think we could do this RFC, sort of moving our existing SBOM functionality into a more useful format. And then from there, it would be easier to layer in the stack changes in a separate RFC.
Okay, and so again, maybe I'm leaning too much onto the following RFC, but again, to mention that platforms or the lifecycle would do a validation against SBOM comparisons for the run image. I want to make sure that that's on the run image that they would be doing that, right? And we don't have that sort of declared those SBOMs anywhere. So again, maybe I'll just kind of jump into that conversation in that RFC.
Yeah, I think the first thing to think about in that RFC would be like, how do we rebase the SBOM so that we get the merged SBOM in particular, so that we get a valid SBOM out the other side after a rebase. And then if we're talking about sort of this remove stacks and mixins RFC, which is discussing like potentially validating a rebase using the SBOM, according to Stephen's RFC, that is not something the lifecycle would do, but it leaves open the idea that platforms could choose to do that to provide extra safety. And it might be something that we would like Pack to do.
All right. Yeah, okay. We could discuss this there. But it sounds like we're still kind of holding off on that a little bit, or it's up in the air. All right. Good with that.
Yeah, I think it would just be really nice for our users if we could take this one very concrete step to merge to move to a usable SBOM. And then from there, it'll be easier to have conversations about how to improve them.
Just so I understand, reading over this, it doesn't seem like it talks about how you like start with the SBOM of a stack of a build time run image, I guess, and then extend it with the SBOM metadata coming from the build pack. So in the end, I don't know if we'd end up with a valid SBOM. I didn't realize it was missing that part. Is that?
So the way I envision it is that we would have different SBOM files that somehow could be merged, but that's a very uneducated sort of guess.
The way I'm imagining it, the grand vision involves a stack SBOM that gets, included in the output and merged in the cases when it's being merged, but it's not in this RFC. We need a separate RFC.
And the stack SBOM would be in the same format as the app image SBOM, which means it might be external to the image.
This RFC is keeping the SBOM in a layer, even if it is also external.
So we could do the same thing for the stack.
So we could do the same thing, yeah.
Is there an advantage of getting this RFC through if we don't capture anything at the base image layer? Besides consensus?
If we want to add the other stuff to this, I think that's fine too. But yes, I think we can get consensus and make one step moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking about the value that this provides, is it's creating a structured format for a bill of materials that we already provide for Buildpacks functionality, right? So like we don't provide bill of materials for the stacks as they are now. So I would essentially vote that we don't, try to inflate this particular RFC and then just start another one with those kind of questions.
Makes sense. It probably wouldn't make sense to deliver the feature by itself, because then we'd be telling people, here's a SBOM for your image, but then it doesn't cover probably most of the things in the image.
I mean, you can say that, but you could say that about our existing SBOM stuff. Like, did it make sense to deliver it? Like, maybe not,
No.
but we did. Like, this is definitely an improvement, right?
I agree.
Yeah. It's like, if we were really good at getting very large RFCs through, I would agree with you, but I would love to just get consensus on a step in the process, and then it'll be easier to add on the next one.
Sounds good. It's not a strong opinion. I just didn't realize it didn't have that part. All right, anything else on 166? Seems like no, so we'll do 173. It's taking a long time to load, so I'm guessing it's the Docker file one.
Yeah, I can't tell what it is because it's not loading for me.
Yep, I got the unicorn. Okay, let's try again. I'm assuming it's a Docker file one then.
So
Yeah.
whoever can open it.
There we go.
There.
So I think I recommended we talk about this one. I'm mostly just looking for approvals or any additional comments if people, have different ideas. I think Joe, you had some comments in there about the API version and about, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, originally I had some concerns about the hook construct, but the way you've changed it, I really like it. I think it's very approachable. The one thing, so I would approve the RFC as is. The one thing I feel we could maybe do better at, and maybe I'm just being maybe I'm caring too much, but the hook, like the hook TOML, and then even the name hook, I feel like, I don't know, there's something about it that I feel like we could do better. And but I don't have any suggestions for improvements. So I wanted to think about it some more and see if anybody else had thoughts on, there's basically, it's so close to Buildpack and Buildpack TOML that it feels like, oh, why do we need to even introduce a new file format and all that? But I don't see any other way really. So.
I am not really opinionated about the name. I kind of, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say the name like is fine. I guess like I would have gone with extension or something like that, but I don't care. It's more that it's like really, really close to Buildpack, and it just makes me wonder if there's anything else we can do to make it one less thing you have to learn. But like I said, I would approve it as is. So.
Got it. If we feel like, the file was called hook TOML before, when it was even more different than Buildpack TOML, and then the API shifted to be, so that hooks are quite similar to Buildpacks in the interface. If we feel strongly like it should be a Buildpack TOML instead of a hook TOML in there, it feels a little weird not to call the other things Buildpacks and this,
Yeah, no,
I do think it's going to be
that's why I'm
divergence.
saying I don't. Yeah, no, I don't think that. And I do think that the current, I don't think we should call it a build pack, as much as like, I think we strive for that. I do like the new hook TOML and stuff better than the previous iteration. I feel like the near parity with Buildpack is a virtue. So.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I looked at this RFC. Could you explain why that change occurred? Like, I guess to me at this, like at first glance, it looks like it's a little bit more complex right? Because it adds this sort of idea of things that sort of look like build packs, but they're called hooks. And then they have, it looks like binaries very similar to build packs with the detect and the build that then ultimately produce or create Docker files.
Yep,
Is there
there's so
more?
much. Sorry, go
Okay,
ahead.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much context that the website doesn't even load anymore most of the time when you go to it. But I'll try to summarize. So what I tried to do with this is start over from scratch, essentially, with what if we just let app developers put a Docker file in their app directory, and the Docker file gets built before the build pack runs, and that's it. Like, what's the absolute simplest thing we could do? And then work that into something that's close to stack packs, but is driven out use case by use case and avoids complexity for each of those use cases, right? And so what we ended up with is something that is close to stack packs, but different in some very specific ways that I think we figured out along the way. And so one of those was instead of a lot of the complexity of the previous API came from, we wanted the stack packs to modify the images as they run. And that created a lot of restrictions, like we need to, we can't have the app directory there. Like all the dependencies of the things when they get applied to the images have to be there as they're getting applied to the image. And so by having them generate Docker files, like just the instructions for it, we can apply those things afterwards, and those dependencies don't have to be there while they're executing. I think that made a big difference in simplifying it. We don't have to have the build packs on both the run image and the build image. That they can just execute on one and output instructions for both, right? And that cuts a ton of complexity out, because now we don't need, the same, two slightly different versions of the stack pack on multiple different images. Another big change is, instead of saying we're going to try to replay changes for rebase, instead we're going to let the author of the hook, I guess in this case, declare whether or not you can rebase out from under what the hook is doing. And so if you only modify things in opt and it's safe to rebase happens immediately. Otherwise, you have to rebuild from on top of the new image. So at least those are the changes coming from the stack pack perspective to what this looks like. Were you asking about that, or were you asking about changes from some point in the what the hooks RFC used to be to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that you just explained was definitely insightful and beneficial to my understanding. I guess one question that is still in the back of my mind that I'm not sure I'm gathering explicitly is, when are the Docker files themselves actually executed in the whole process?
So all the hooks execute at the beginning, and they execute in parallel. They all generate Docker files, and then those Docker files are applied in build pack order.
So, and is this for creating a builder, or creating, or like during the build process?
The Docker files extend the build image and the run image, and then the build pack build process happens. If extending the build process creates a new builder, or if it could be implemented such that extending the build image, runs directly on top of the builder and modifies the builder live, and then the layers it generates are cached somewhere. It could be implemented with BuildKit locally to actually extend the builder image directly, and then the next step happens on a new image. I could see if different implementations depending on the limitations of your platform.
Okay.
Locally, I'd imagine it creates new images. On Tecton, it can't create new images, right? It probably modifies the builder live.
Yep. And then this is more or less just a comment. So there's a lot of files that are somewhat being reused, file names that are being reused from build packs, but they have a lot of caveats of things that they don't support. And I could definitely envision a lot of confusion on sort of the context in which a file is present. And I think we've seen that for a lot of different files that we have, like build package, or sorry, the package TOML versus the build pack TOML and that sort of stuff. So I do wonder if that could be mitigated through some other fashion.
You
But
mean
no-
bin build it? Sorry.
Yeah, the build TOML, the launch TOML, that sort of stuff.
And bin build and bin detect also, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, those less so because they're not configuration files. But if I were to like Google, right, or go to our website and say, I want to look up what a build.toml or launch.toml looks like, now I have, oh, are you talking about in hooks or are you talking about in a build pack? And now I have to know the difference of the context in which I'm looking at these files.
I think the files are really similar. I can't load maybe I can load the files. Let's see. In a minute, I might be able to see what the files look like, but okay, actually, there we go. So what restrictions are we talking about on those?
So
I
launch
forget.
TOML says no processes, no slices,
Yeah,
additional args table array, something, which I'm not capturing right now.
yeah, build args, that's right. So yeah, so they're similar in that they hold the SBOM information, right? They have that same interface for capturing SBOM information. It's just the launch one doesn't have, processes and slices, and they both get args. Args is build args for the Docker files, so you don't have to templatize your Docker files. This is feedback from Sam. You can just put build args in TOML and they'll get injected automatically. So your suggestion would be to give those files different names.
I think, I mean, that's one approach, right? For trying to minimize that sort of confusion. Yeah.
Natalie suggested hook.launch.toml in the chat. That makes sense. I don't have a strong opinion. I could see, on one hand, we do this in a lot of places, and it is roughly the same schema with just some fields that are allowed in some contexts and not allowed in other contexts. On the other hand, I think I agree that, it's confusing to have the same file with different in really different contexts. I kind of feel similar about bin build and bin detect because those also have a very similar interface, but the app directory is read only, and there's just some small different. The layers directory, you output Docker files instead of outputting layers, right? It's just some small differences.
So it might all be resolvable via naming, right? Just prepending hook dash or hook dot, whatever.
When we're talking about naming, I've been thinking about, so first of all, I don't like hook. I feel like it's evolved enough that it's not a hook and it's confusing. And I also agree that we shouldn't just go with build pack. I feel like the fact that we called what I'll call meta or multi-build packs also build packs has actually been persistently confusing when we tried to explain to people what's going on, especially because we did not canonicalize either of those terms in the spec to refer to them. So I wonder if we should sort of try to shift our nomenclature to a world where only something with a normal bin build script is a build pack, and then you have build packs, multi-build packs, or multi-pack. I was wondering if this should be like a base pack because it extends the base image. It's like there's something like they all have something in common, so they all get like a pack on the end, but they're actually all have a different word. It's like they're siblings, but they're not the same.
I think I have two strong opinions. One is that we shouldn't invent more words. We have too many words, made up words already. And the other is that, which is very, like I'm not super attached to that. But the other is that I do think of the meta build, like to me, the word is important less for how it's structured and more for how it can be used. And because meta build packs, like the intent of that interface is that you can use them in all the contexts that you can use a regular build pack, right? And yes, they do, refer to dependent build packs instead of executing logic themselves. they have an ID, you can use that ID and swap it in place of regular build pack IDs anywhere else. So to me, I like that those two things are called build packs, but I agree that this thing is not a build pack because you can't use it in all those places. It's the places you can use this are very different. But I don't think we should make up a new word for it, if that makes sense.
First of all, one of my quibbles
with
is
meta build packs, I've actually had the opposite experience, just anecdotally, that I think it helps people understand it. I agree that we don't have it defined well, and that has been challenging for people, but I think it clicks very, very quickly based on what it is. And I went down this exact same line of thinking as you. Like, is it a hook pack? Is it a base pack? But yeah, I think I kind of landed where Steven said, I don't want to invent terms. Like we're getting rid of mix-ins and stack, and I feel like that's an improvement. So
okay. I think the meta build packs at least should be called multi build packs because meta doesn't actually make sense.
yeah, not 0 sense.
Hooks also don't make any sense. Like if someone says that there are hooks that you can add to the life cycle, or you can insert hooks into your build, I'm imagining something really specific that isn't this, right?
To me, it's like base image hooks or something like that, like hooks that execute, because they always run first, right? They don't run in the middle of your build or after your build, right? And that's like, if I think about like a, pre-commit hook in Git, right? And it's something that runs before I commit. Like, I don't know, that's where it comes from. But at the same time, I have very little attachment to the word hook. I just think it should be an easy to understand English word that describes its behavior. That's the best I can do. So if you have better suggestions, I'm very open to changing it.
It's like a
I just
base
invented
image
another word.
extender. I'm not into inventing words, but I don't mind sticking two words that we already use together. That would be my argument for the base pack. It's like we use base images. Pack means like it's a thing that runs in our system in a way that works with the other things. If I had a suggestion that wasn't hook and wasn't silly, I would give it, but I'd take silly over hook, I think, because I think hook is misleading.
What about builder hook? It's a builder hook. It's a hook that runs the builder. No.
It's not a hook though. Why is it a hook? What does it have in common with hooks?
It's like a pre-build hook. It's something that you're not specifying in your list of primary build packs that lives in the builder, that changes if you change to different builders, right? That
A
executes
hook makes it seem
automatically.
like you can just run anything arbitrary, which you can't. And like if you're calling this
And
a
out of
hook,
band as well,
yeah, if you're calling
like a
this a
web
hook
hook.
and it participates in detect and it has a structured build phase, then like are all of our build packs also hooks? Are they all just hooks? Like I don't know why this is a hook and the other ones aren't.
Because it lives in the builder. It has to live on the base image. It's like you have a pre-commit hook on your workstation, right? That's the same code for all different Git repos you use, right? That's like a consistent thing that can do arbitrary things because they can make arbitrary changes to the base image that build packs can't make. They could replace the whole base image with something else, right? They do have that quality to me. But I agree, it's not a perfect analogy.
Yeah, I like the word extensions better, like EXTs, but I don't know, like, it kind of reminds me of like a kernel extension. Like you said, it's sort of like something that everything that built off this builder probably gets. And yeah, I did have one question. I can't comment on GitHub because it's busted. But I'd like to see an example that uses the provides the way that you've described it. I'd like to kind of understand like what's the purpose of having provides. And then anyway, it's just kind of hard to understand what the examples there, because there's not an example of bin detect that I know of and that I see currently.
The use case for provides, this originally didn't have any build plan interaction, or was like very separate from, there was at least 2 or 3 iterations where it was still very separate from the Buildpack API. And I was convinced to add that and also to switch the interface to bin build and bin detect, based on some use cases where folks wanted Buildpacks later to be able to say, these are the things I need, these are the changes I need to happen to the base image, and use some kind of interface to communicate to the build, stack packs or whatever hooks that are going to run initially to install packages. So the way provides would work is like if you had a apt build pack, it could provide package installation, and later build packs could require that these packages get installed or something like that. If you had a really specific build pack that installs a curl package, it could provide curl, and then later build packs would require curl, and then it could install that package onto the base image.
So is there like skipping and stuff involved still? Like if no one requires curl, does build still get executed? It does, right?
I think it does not. They're always optional, I think. And if their things aren't met, then they just don't run.
Okay, I'm not sure. Is that in? Does it say anything about it?
It's been like 3 weeks since I've looked at this.
Yeah.
And it's changed so many
Yeah.
times.
Okay.
They're definitely optional. I forget if none of the provides are required by anything if they execute or not. But I would assume it would work like normal build packs where they do not.
I know it's been funny to joke about this crashing GitHub, but given how much this has changed over time and how a lot of the older comments are probably irrelevant, do you want to actually close this and open a new PR from the same branch, and we can like declare bankruptcy and start again with fresh comments?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
And to be clear, because of the provides requires, that means that these extensions or hooks can only be relied on for the build part of something, right? So that means like in detect, they can't use like curl because all the detects of the normal build packs run prior to this. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. You couldn't use this to make base image extensions that are that the build pack detect scripts
Detect or
use.
something. Okay.
Runs after the detect phase. It's a good point. Cool. Any other questions?
Is it running after the detect phase a big? I feel like that removes potentially stuff like, oh, I want to install JQ because it's not on the stack image or something, like use case, which we've seen a lot over here. So you're still kind of forced to basically put all those things in the stack, I guess, beforehand.
Unless you want to, or if you need them during detect, that's right. I think it would be a completely different RFC if it had to run after detect, because then we couldn't link it to the build plan at all, which means build packs couldn't express dependencies on the thing or install packages. The original version was like that, but it got blocked by, I think there's feedback from Charles and then also from some folks at Google that they really need their build packs to be able to affect which operating system packages get installed. And so then we'd have to create another pre-detect phase that happens before the normal detect phase, have two executions of something like a build plan in a row. I think it would be really hard to figure out how that would work. But
We can only solve one problem, like either installing dependencies so they can be used during detect, or like using detect to figure out which dependencies need to be installed. I think that second problem has a much broader set of people who want it and use cases for it. In general, I feel like it should be possible to have a detect script that runs with as few dependencies as possible. And if you really need something like JQ, like the Buildpack author could vendor it into the Buildpack or something if they really wanted to.
I think we could make that clearer in the RFC whenever you create the new branch, like when this runs. I'm not sure it's explicitly stated that it's like before other detects. And then, yeah, it could be skipped. I'm not sure that's defined here either.
yeah, that makes sense. Anything else on this one? Realize we didn't put time limits on the thing like we said we would do before. If there's nothing else on this, I actually want to go back to, because now we have Terrence here on SBOM. I think Terrence, you had some feedback about multiple formats. Should we go back to that for a minute?
Sure.
So the feedback there was just you had some concerns about supporting multiple SBOM formats initially. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I mean, it's probably similar to your original comment on the RFC, but I mean, I get the ecosystem thing, but also just like more choice and more support. I think potentially just makes it more challenging, because it's not like we're also ditching the original BOM format either, right? Like that's there for backwards compatibility. And so we have yet another thing. I mean, I guess if people feel super strongly, but like, what do people do, I guess, with like kind of the bombs after the fact, and kind of what's the expectation on the project to kind of provide a thing that's useful to kind of be used. And then I guess an ecosystem, which is probably something we care about a lot at like Rogue and Salesforce, is like, if we pull in third-party Buildpacks, right, and someone uses basically SPDX, but like our entire thing uses Cyclone DX, like, do you merge everything that is Cyclone DX and then also provide the like one Buildpack or two Buildpacks that are SPDX as separate, individual ones? Like, I feel like kind of really hurts kind of the advantage of having and favoring something like Cyclone DX the moment you kind of have. I mean, you already have this problem for the non-SBOM case, which is if they're using the existing thing. But I do feel like it does, like, anytime you have like that one that does not conform, like it kind of, I think, really hurts that Cyclone DX use case of merging everything together, because you just can't. I don't know if that makes sense, Stephen.
I agree. We're like, I by all of those arguments. that's I put that in the issue at some point. I think if Cyclone DX had general consensus that it's the direction people are going to move eventually, especially if it were easy to convert between different formats, then I would agree. I would say that's what we should do. Some of the things Sam brought up, just because he's done a lot of research on what are the different formats, who's supportive of them, who's using what for what, is that different groups are entrenched in both of those different formats. Cyclone DX DX has OWASP and a lot of security vendors on board. SPDX has a lot of large open source projects on board. SPDX is used heavily in like open source compliance, licensing, and that stuff, and supports some features that CycloneDX doesn't. CycloneDX supports a bunch of security features around provenance and things that SPDX doesn't. And so people's use cases for the two differ a lot. And sometimes people will only be able to use one or only be able to use the other. They're not as convertible as yes, you can convert like maybe 5 or 6 fields of a CycloneDX SBOM per entry into something that, is into SPDX format. But it doesn't can't, like, if people are using SPDX to do anything more advanced than something very simple, it doesn't capture everything. And so conversion between the two isn't super, it only works in the simplest case, if that makes sense. There's not a way to convert from SPDX to CycloneDX reliably in that direction at all. So they're two competing things. It's very hard to tell which will win. Some days, depending on who I talk to, I feel like, oh yes, clearly we should do one or the other one, if that makes sense. If I'm talking to people who are more kind of secure, I don't know how you describe that, more security focused, then the SPDX tends to be the preference. If I'm talking to people who are more compliance focused, SPDX tends to be the preference. So I don't know how we pick one and then make everybody happy. I think we can't pick a winner.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it though, right? Like you're just not, I think that's true of anything in our project. Like you're just not gonna make everyone happy. And that's part of it.
I think eventually one will win though, is the hard part. People aren't gonna keep using two different formats forever.
This is probably too complex, but we could add something to the Buildpack API that's sort of like, it tells a Buildpack which format to use. And when someone runs a build, they can pick which format. And then if a Buildpack does not support a format, sort of like your build fails, which might be good anyways. I think right now it's very hard to know whether all your build packs are contributing to the bomb or not. It might be good if you want a bomb, it might be good if the build fails, if that bomb is incomplete anyways. And then you would have to like rerun with no bomb or something to force it to go through.
Like in some ways, this feels worse than our current solution, right? Because at least like our current solution, everyone writes the bomb in the same format, right? Like we're not dealing with backwards compatibility. Like I get it's not standards compliant, but like in some ways, like this almost feels worse in some degrees.
Our current format makes it very hard to generate an accurate bomb though. It's gonna have to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas you could use a bunch of pre-existing tools to generate it for you if we had a standard format.
I don't think our format, because we're talking about JSON for both, I don't think our format is any different than if you took a bunch of SPDX and CycloneDX entries and put them next to each other, because we didn't standardize the contents of any of the entries. And what we're talking about here is the contents of the entries. So I think supporting both is just as inconsistent as what we're doing now. To me.
But then it's either all the build packs that were used to do the build used SPDX, or they all used CycloneDX, and you get like a really nice output. Or if there's a mix mash, you could have something that essentially merges them, but then you only have 2 formats to deal with as opposed to an undefined amount per build pack, right?
It's a little more complicated. It's like you can't merge SPDX and you can't really reliably convert in either direction. And so the artifact you end up with at the end is an OCI image and cosines SBOM format that has a bunch of different separate SBOMs in it that contains all of the SBOMs anything ever output, if that makes sense. So that would be SPDX per layer for layers that output at SPDX. cyclone per layer and then a merged cyclone. And then eventually if somehow, if somebody if we come up with an interface for providing logic that lets you merge the SPDX things, which you can't do in an automated way right now, then you could have a joined SPDX SBOM also, but you do get one artifact that has everything in it at the end.
Yeah, so I guess I wasn't thinking so much for us or our project to be doing that sort of merging or post-processing. I was thinking more if I'm a DevOps engineer or some form or fashion part of this enterprise, I then at least have all these contents that I could post-process to my own needs, but at least there's only 2 formats that I have to worry about, as opposed to an infinite amount based on these sort of build packs that are creating different SBOM formats.
Yeah, definitely. It is more standard than the current thing. Sorry, I misunderstood what you're saying.
Yes, but we're basically asking every platform now to support both, right? More or less.
Depends on what you mean by every platform, right?
I mean, if you care about this, right? It's just like generically we support both. So, Buildpacks can write either or. So if you want to be fully compatible with the ecosystem, you basically have to support both, right?
This RFC really isn't asking platforms to do anything. Like we haven't even taken it to the point where we would put the SBOMs in a cosine image or something like that. Although that does seem like the natural next step. But I think to do that, you don't really need to know much about the formats anyways.
It is kind of asking platforms to, like, if your platform is fully open to any build pack, I find this like almost impossible to really like produce anything that, like if this was on Heroku today, like no one, build packs are coming from all over the place, and those build pack authors are not doing this. And maybe that's just the wrong target thing, which is why I'm mostly staying out of it. But I don't know. It's like, are build pack authors going to do both of these formats who are not like a part of a megacorp? I don't know. I doubt it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think initially that was a concern of mine, but I think if it's really as open as Heroku, you can't do anything because people are just, the build packs could lie to you. They could not do it at all. Right. So I think at that point, it might just be like, nope, it's on end users to figure it out.
I feel like build packs
I
that
think I'm okay
aren't
with
part of a megacorp are unlikely to generate a bomb at all, right? Unless Heroku put some sort of restriction and I was like, no, you can't run here unless you make a bomb.
Well, that's the thing that could happen though, right? Like that platform could say, yeah, you can use whatever you want. If you want to enter this like secure mode, will require certain things of the build packs.
Like that's where we need so that you can like hook in and like write your own bomb after each build pack if they didn't provide one.
It seems like
that, so
something we could put in build pack toml, sort of like supported bomb format. So then at least when people are choosing a build pack, they can see what formats are supported, and platforms could do validation to create a coherent set if they wanted.
Yeah, especially if it's an array, right? Because I could envision a build pack being able to generate both.
Yeah. And then maybe so they don't waste time generating both, we also add something to the build pack API telling them which one was requested.
Couldn't that just be an environment variable similar to how they're commonly configured?
Yeah, I think it should, but I wouldn't want every build pack to pick a slightly different version of it, right?
Maybe a more philosophical argument for why we should support both. It's like something we've talked about before, is like sometimes we treat the project as if we're building one platform that runs build packs, but we're really building tools and specification for how to do different things with build packs. And so something that kind of changed my mind that made me feel like we should do both is that, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for this kind of like generic way of building containers to express a hard, an opinion that no, all SBOMs may be in this group's particular format that is not necessarily widely accepted, right? Compared to, the other formats. I think a platform that implements Buildpacks could say, yes, one or the other, if that makes sense. Could enforce that, no, we don't run Buildpacks here that are SPDX, but it does feel a little weird to me to say that we're, our specific with Buildpacks, you're never able to generate an SBOM in any other format except for this one, right? Because, we're really trying to build tools and specification for building container images that solve problems in a certain way, not on a highly opinionated platform for doing that. But that doesn't mean that platform couldn't exist. It just means that I'm not super convinced that that should be how it's the right place to express the opinion.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm a little the other way where I think like I rather almost have like a bin / SBOM where like every build pack can contribute whatever they want to SBOM and we just kind of slurp that up and put it somewhere. And then if there's another hook that we need to write so that they can potentially merge them. Yeah, but I know that that's like, we've already sort of had that discussion and that's fine. But that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't want to limit it to one, but I almost just rather limit it to like, just it's open, like we just provide the hooks and let the community build around it. But
So I know we're running out of time, but I was very interested on the last RFC, the project descriptor one. I do wonder if maybe we could take that on to office hours after the community speaks.
Sounds good. Sorry, did not do a very good job of time management during this. Let's plan to do that during the office hours and we can bring it up during working group next week also. All right, anything else for this one? All right, thanks everybody.